So in just 17 days' time, we'll see the running of the Hollywoodbets Durban July, the first Hollywoodbets Durban July. I think the first of many, a more appropriate sponsor for this year's premier race. I don't think you could find. 5 million rand is up for grabs. The positioning goes down to 10th in terms of the prize money on offer. And we've got our great panel lined up once again for you. We welcome back to Graham Hawkins and to Mike Wanklin from Dubai. Graham, obviously, in Durban. Jay August joins us. He couldn't make the last show, but it's very, very nice of him to join us this time around. And Jay, thanks very much for your time. And Neil and I will be running through what we've entitled on today's show, A Clearer Picture to the 2022 Hollywoodbets Durban July. But that's what I've entitled it. Now, is it going to be clearer or is it going to be more murkier? The weights of the race were announced yesterday. They were finalized yesterday and published. There was one supplementary entry at the final stage, which we'll pick up on as well. And the way that Neil's looking probably describes it all. The results over the last couple of weeks have been a bit topsy-turvy in terms of who we expected to win and who has won. So let's start off with Graham. Graham, next week, you're obviously part of the panel that will decide on the final 18 plus 2 reserves. It's going to be a difficult task, not so much with the horses that have picked their sales according to the conditions of the race because they've qualified in terms of winning races, but certainly the bottom half of the field is going to be tough.
Yeah, I'm not really at liberty to declare my hand on this subject, so it's quite naughty of you to start with me, but I guess that's a deliberate strategy in the true Nico Critsiotis fashion. It's always tricky at the bottom end. The obvious horses are in. Obviously, we've still got a declaration stage to come, so we're assuming, they may not all finally accept. There may be reasons why a horse particularly won't accept at the very last minute, but yeah, it's always around the bottom end that it becomes a little bit more subjective. So it's always an interesting exercise and one that never finds favor with everybody. Yeah. But we're used to that now.
Yeah. Neil, just quickly touching on the results of the past few weeks of the races that lead up into the big race on the 2nd of July. What's your take on what happened, for example, in the Daily News and what happened in the Gold Challenge? What's your take on all of it?
Well, I think that the Daily News Safe Passage laid down a huge claim of, if you believe that a 3-year-old is going to win the race, then Safe Passage, just on the bare bones of the exposed form, is going to take a lot of beating by the other 3-year-olds, because he's only got to give a kilogram to the likes of Pomp and Power and Waterbury Lane and so forth, and he certainly firmly put them in their place by beating them by 2 lengths, and he's only got to give them 1 length. So if that form is franked, then he certainly is the 3-year-old to beat. Of course, there's the draw still to come, and there might be different tactics. Certainly, Pomp and Power probably didn't get the run of the race. He pulled early, but just on the bare bones of the form, Safe Passage really deserves to be favoured. And of course, the market spoke. He's now shortened into 4-1, 9-2. As far as the challenge, the Gold Challenge is concerned, yeah, I think that was an interesting race. Again, from Jet Dog's point of view, he got a little bit far back in the run and couldn't quicken up. But I see that the handicapper has dropped him, said he hasn't achieved the rating that he gained in the Lormeron Queen's Plate in his 3 runs. So that's interesting. I don't think that's in question at all, that form. It's just a question of, some of the unexposed horses who are coming back after a break, and actually what is Justin Snaith going to do with the likes of Jet Dark and Belgarian and horses of that nature. But I didn't think that anything was completely out of kilter, apart from that Safe Passage, as I say, really did step forward and laid a strong claim.
Now, Jay, you didn't join us for the previous show. We're down to I think 36 now that have stayed to claim. Obviously, as Graham mentioned, some may pull out because of the fact that they don't want to run them in the Durban July, and that it's not the race that would suit their profile. But it's undoubtedly the best horses that we've got in this country at the highest level, competing for what is South Africa's most prestigious prize. But at the end of the day, it's a form of handicap, isn't it? Just explain to our viewers why it's not a true handicap.
You've got certain constrictions or compaction of the handicap. So you've got horses that are 16 points below the top. Well, it's actually 14 points for colts and 16 for fillies below the top-rated horse. If their rating is below the top-rated horse minus 14 or 16, they will be under sufferance. So that's not abnormal from a normal handicap. And then you've got certain weight maximums for 3-year-olds, 57. And I think fillies also carry 57 kilos as a maximum. So, if you look at the race this year, there's very few horses that are going to run under sufferance. I think it's only the 2-year-olds, Red Saxon and Pomp and Power, if they run, that will run half a kilo under sufferance. So I think this year we've got the closest to a handicap we've had in many years, a proper handicap, a true handicap.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at, what your feeling was on that, and you've explained that. Mike Wanklin, I want to ask about last year's winner and your thoughts on him in Joburg and what you think of him this year. People aren't mentioning him at all, apart from a bit of news coming through in the last 24 to 48 hours that he was doing pretty well down in KwaZulu-Natal, but people aren't mentioning Comity Ding. Is he a factor?
I think he's a huge factor. But the intriguing thing for me was when I saw Jay's WhatsApp message with the weights yesterday or the day before. I think this is a wide open July. I really do. I reckon there's 10 horses in the mix. And we've mentioned in the previous program, Do It Again. Jet Dark, knowing the shrewdy that the Snaith stables are, I don't think they exposed his full hand in the Gold Challenge. So I think it's a wide open race, and I do like the likes of Linebacker. I do like Safe Passage. I do like Pomp and Power. I think it's just a massively intriguing race. And closer to the time when the draws have come out and we work out the pace map and who's riding which horse and why they've made those choices, I think it's an intriguing race this year.
And you mentioned the jockeys. Now, a lot is going to happen in the next week. A lot has happened already. Pierre Stradum is coming back into the saddle, hoping to ride another Durban July winner. And he's already got the ride on Bulgarian. But some interesting factors playing out behind the scenes. I'm hearing Warren Kennedy's booked for Aragosta. Mike de Kock's decided that he's going to give that ride to Warren Kennedy because Warren Kennedy was going to get the ride on Naval Guard if Naval Guard qualified, which it didn't. It didn't win the Jubilee. And even if it did win the Jubilee, getting in would have been up to the adjudicators. But Graham, just asking about the jockeys, the one interesting discussion I had today at the de Kock yard was which horse Kamala was going to ride, because he's booked on both Jet Dark and Sparkling Water. Mike assured me that he was riding Sparkling Water.
Well, I know as much as you're telling me. I would have assumed that he's riding Jet Dark. Does one read into that? And here comes more intrigue. Does one read into that perhaps Jet Dark is not going to accept when it comes to the final stage, rather go for the Champions Cup? Because I would have thought that he would have stuck with Jet Dark, even though there's a question mark over the distance. Sparkling Water is a huge runner. I get the sense, chatting to Mike de Kock, that in some way he thinks she's the stable elite. And there's been huge money over the last 10 days for Sparkling Water. But obviously it's also got Safe Passage, along with El Muthana, serious distance question mark, and Aragosta. But like Neil said, I think Aragosta should be safely held by Safe Passage. And it doesn't really matter because Do It Again's going to win it.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because there's obviously had to be a change of rider there because of Anton Marcus being now on the sidelines for a little bit. So Elder Domeyer is the new rider on Do It Again. I'm saying you're still sticking with it then?
I haven't seen anything to sway me in any other direction. I was hugely impressed with his win in the WSB 1900. Yes, I know the opposition was his meeting on Saturday, the 2nd of July, but you can't question his CV in this race. And I was encouraged yesterday on the first day of Royal Ascot when I saw the 7-year-old Nature Strip absolutely dawdling home. And I thought, here comes the 7-year-old double. Nature Strip at Royal Ascot and Do It Again at Hollywoodbets Gravel. So anybody who thinks that 7-year-olds can't win races at the very highest level, Nature Strip came back to remind everybody that we sometimes ride our horses off too soon in terms of their age. As long as they're healthy, well, sound, and in good form, there's no reason why Do It Again should not again certainly be in the finish. He's got a fantastic CV in this race. I'm not 100% sure. I'd like to hear from Mike and Neil and Jay. I'm not convinced about the 3-year-olds. I mean, I understand obviously they are meeting the older horses at far better terms than weight for age. Some of them, the weight for age different 2 kilograms, and also like Pomp and Power is receiving a lot more than 2 kilograms from many of the older principals, as are all the 3-year-olds. But for me, linebacker. So my 1, 2, 3 would be at this stage. Do It Again, linebacker, and Sparkling Water. But obviously, healthy respect for Safe Passage and Pomp and Power and Jet Dark and Comedy Dung. Those would be my B list. But my A list is Do It Again, linebacker, and Sparkling Water. I think Do It Again is the best of the older brigade. Like Neil says, I think Safe Passage is the best of the 3-year-olds. It's not hard to make Sparkling Water the best filly in the race. She's the only one in the race. So, but I think she's peaking at the right time, and I like the confidence coming through. So I'm sticking with Do It Again. I was fortunate enough to get a big price, and I'm happy to stay with that.
Just Jay, if I can just go to you now. Graham brought up the fact of the 3-year-olds versus the older horses. What's your take on our 3-year-old crop for this year's Durban July, and are they capable of winning it? When you do your assessment, and obviously you look at it daily, I mean, you're watching the results daily, how have our 3-year-olds fared this year in comparison to their older contemporaries?
I think these 3-year-olds are a fairly good crop, and I think Pomp and Power, Aragosta, we run them off Zapatilis, and a Safe Passage are more than good enough to win this race. They're pretty close in ratings. I think we haven't had exact standouts this year as we've had maybe last year, but these 4 together, and the fact that Safe Passage has given the others 1.5 kilos brings them close together. A 3-year-old that wins in July is typically improving, and 3-year-olds this time of the year are typically improving. They probably 3 to 4, maybe even 5 pounds higher than their current rating. So I would say every single one of these 3-year-olds is potentially underrated, which brings them into this race in a big way. It really just, it's draw and run of the race that's gonna make a difference. Can I just make one point about 7-year-olds? 7-year-old mare won the Melbourne Cup this year off top weight for a mare last year rather. There's no reason why Do It Again shouldn't win this year. He's the best handicapped horse in the race, in my opinion, and that's taking into account that the 3-year-olds are probably underrated by a couple of points. So I concur with what Graham said about 7-year-olds. I think the 3-year-olds are definitely in the mix, but given the nature of the win that Do It Again put up in the 1900, it's going to take a hell of a horse to beat him. The only thing that would beat him is perhaps to draw 1 or draw 2, which wouldn't be ideal.
Now, Neil, you're the betting man in all of this. You're the most active betting man out of the people I can see on the screen anyway. In fact, if we had another 100, you'd probably be the top of that pile as well. But all of that put together, how big is that book looking of yours? Because, I mean, you start getting into top gear in April. It's now June, and who knows what it'll be on the 2nd of July. But have you widened the net of the number of horses, or have you just carried on backing those short lists of yours?
So I'm similar to Graham in so much as I backed my horses and I'm sticking to the horses. The only difference is Graham is happy with his horse and I am suicidal with mine. I'm on the wrong horses, but I'm afraid my position and my book is going to need a little bit of help and miracle, which can happen. And this is my point, because I've learned a lot from Jay, but one of the things that I'm hanging my hat on is that Jay has banged into me the importance of the draw. And so I am hoping that although I think I'm on the wrong horses, that I might get a little bit of luck in so much as my horses get the draws they need, and some of the opposition that I haven't backed that I actually think will win the race don't get the draws. So until the draw is made, I'm only semi-suicidal.
Okay, so let's talk about the draw now that you bring the draw up. Let's go to Mike, because Mike mentioned about the pace map. You know, once you know the final field, and once you know the barrier draw, then you can assess on who's going to go where. And as Jay pointed out, some horses don't want lower draws; they want higher draws. But let's go to Mike. Mike, is it all that important? I mean, if you're drawn 20, you can't necessarily not win. Many horses that were drawn 20 have won the race, including Dynasty, who's a top-class individual. But I'm just saying, how important is that draw? Is it as important as Jay and Neil have mentioned now? Is it not that important?
Look, I think the draw cost Rainbow Bridge last year. I think he was drawing 1 or 2 or something, and he got stuck on the rail and just couldn't get a free gallop. It all depends on the pace. I don't even consider the draw if I know that there's going to be a pace. I've just watched a race from Royal Ascot where the 5-runner field in the Prince of Wales Stakes, and the pace was made by State of Stars, and he stole the race because he made the pace. Now, the thing is, in July, you're going to get a full field. So your pace is likely to be more honest. And I remember Piers Stradham saying on one of our shows that they go too fast early and then they hold it up, and then it becomes a bit of a sprint off the false rail at the end. So the speed map needs to be looked at after the draws have come out, and to see if there's going to be a genuine pace, or if it's going to be a race where horses are going to get into trouble. And I think it's cost a horse like Do It Again in 1 or 2 of the Julys where he's run 3rd or 4th or whatever, because he's been caught in a race that's not had a genuine pace. It's so important. I find it extraordinary that the connections before big races like the Met and the July, and that they don't study what's going to happen when those horses jump out the gates. You know, in Asia, that is critical. And
it's that false sense of security from a false rail. Sorry to interrupt you. It's that false rail that creates that false sense of security about what the pace could or wouldn't be, because they sprint in the
100%, Jay. I hate false rails. I hate them
because the false rail in the Hollywoodbets Durban July is not wide. It's about 1 meter.
I think with the new track configuration from 2014, to me it's become obvious that you want to draw from 10 upwards. It's quite difficult to win under 10, because what you do is you get tucked in behind the pace or just off the pace. You get some cover even though you're running wide, and jockeys specifically that know how to ride July winners start pushing their mounts just before the false rail. Whereas horses trapped on the rail typically are sitting behind a wall of horses that are pulling back, and they only started their run 100 meters later.
So
I think that draws pretty.
Jay, just quickly, you've done an assessment of this. Obviously, this is what you do. I mean, you look at the draws and so forth. So since the track was reconfigured with the addition of the poly track and what does it show? Has it shown what you're telling us now, that higher draws are more favorable?
It's indicating that, but your biggest problem is you've got so little data that your likelihood that it's just a random result that you're getting is quite high.
Yeah.
But if you look at the horses run, if you look at some of the favourites that have run under 10 or close to the paint, like Rainbow Bridge did for 2 Julys, you can clearly see what's happening. Those horses are starting their approaches to the finishing post about 100 to 150 meters later than the horses circling the field. Comedy Ding last year did it. I think Bulgarian did it wide as well. Do It Again. Dynasty did it, although that was on the old course configuration. You look at this year. You look at if the horse that should be in the number 1 draw this year is Asterix, because he wouldn't mind making the pace. He'd make his own pace. He'd do exactly what he did in the Premier's Challenge. A horse like Pomp and Power, you don't want him anywhere near the number 1 draw because he's likely to tug, get in the lead, and then cause all sorts of problems. So a horse like Pomp and Power, you would prefer him to be drawn 18, frankly, so you can tuck him in behind it.
So Graham,
so it's very crucial.
Yeah,
it's very crucial.
You're officiating at the draw. So when you do these draw functions, people go, when they get those big draws, the crowd goes wonderfully wild when it's drawn 2 and 3. What Jay's doing is going this. He's doing this. He's saying, no, I don't want it to be 2 and 3. It shouldn't be 2 and 3. You've got all these people ululating and whatever it is at the July draw, going, we've scored a massive draw. Meantime, it's led to their demise, really.
Look, I think if Pomp and Power drew 1, I think Greg Ports would be holding his head in his hands for sure. That's not where you want to be drawn with a horse like that. But Asterix, different story. It'd be prime position because if there's any pace in this race.
Well, can you do us an exercise then? Can you do me an exercise, please? I want Jay August, which I'll relate to everyone. I want Jay August to do me an exercise of where you think the connections of each of the runners would like to be drawn. Can you do that for me?
Right now?
In your own time. In your own time.
Let me run through it very quickly.
Before the draw, obviously. Before the draw.
Sure. So let me run. I'm looking at my screen here with the horses. The horses you want potentially drawn on the paint as close to 1 as possible. Asterix. You don't want Pomp and Power there. Jet Dog, you also don't want on the paint. You don't want, big horse like Jet Dog, you don't want him on the paint at all. Comedy Ding, last year he came from wide. He can do that again. Bulgarian, same, do it again. You don't want drawn on the paint. Linebacker, I think, can run anywhere. He's probably a horse that could draw anywhere. Almatana, same thing. Safe Passage, given the way he ran in the Daily News, I would want to draw above 10. Porto Manzano, he could stay up with the pace, so he wouldn't mind a.
But you're going to do the exercise. You're going to do it for us, just that we can have yours. Now let's go back to Graham. Graham, I can't help but touch on the matter again. We've got, I think, 36 is the number currently. That are in the race. I counted 36. I may be 1 or 2 out, but I counted 36. So you're saying some horses may fall out. Just give us the pertinent dates now of what happens in the next 2 weeks before the race.
Well, it all happens in the next couple of days. The final acceptances, the declarations are due on Monday. We announce the field on Tuesday and do the draw for barrier positions on Tuesday. And then, of course, the gallops on Thursday. So it's all happening within the next couple of days. So, obviously the horses have come this far. So you're not really expecting too many, if any, scratchings at the closing stage, which is the final declaration stage. The weights have been published, so they all know what they're carrying. There can be no adjustment to the weights. The draw obviously remains unknown at this stage at the time of declaration, but everybody wants to run, and if the horses are in the right space and have continued to do well back at home leading into that final declaration stage, then we're not expecting too many to come out. But there've been one or two disappointing performances in the week. You know, that you've got to pay. You know, it costs you to declare. It's not a cheap exercise to run. So as an owner, you've got to say, well, am I being realistic here, given the form of my horse over the last couple of weeks or whatever the case may be? Against that, on the flip side of that coin, is the fact that we pay down to 10th. So on the one hand, you've got the owner saying, well, I really don't believe my horse is going to be competitive in terms of a top 4 finish, but what the heck, I'd like a runner in the Hollywoodbets Durban July, and I might run 9th or 10th and get my money back and have the whole thrill and experience of being there on the big days. So yeah, so we'll have to wait and see, obviously, what the final declarations are. Those will be concealed. The field will be hidden until we do the announcement at 11 o'clock on Tuesday, live on many platforms. And once we've announced the final field, then we'll do immediately the draw for barrier positions, as we've done over the last number of years. So there's not a great change from what we've done in the previous years, except that we're doing it slightly earlier. We're doing it at 11 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. Now, I'm going to wrap it up. We've got 10 minutes of show left, but I'm going to go around because it's the last opportunity we'll get in this forum of discussing what our shortlist really should be with 17 days to go. So, Neil, let's start with you. You've got the crystal ball. You've taken on the position of Nostradamus for the next minute and a half. Your assessment of the finish, the last 50 meters of the Hollywoodbets Durban July 2022?
Well, I've got two results. I mean, I've got the result that I would like, which would be something like Pomp and Power to beat Hoedspruit and Zapatalis. That would be one of my ideal results, but I don't think that's going to come to pass. From what I've seen, I must be, I have to, somebody said it earlier on, I think Graham said, you've got to be realistic. Same as an owner, you have to be realistic. As a punter, you have to be realistic. So that's what I would like to happen. But what I think, depending on draws, I think the Safe Passage is definitely going to be the horse to beat. After that, I have to respect Do It Again. I think Graham's right and Mike's right and Jay's right. I mean, he loves Gravel. Mike said it time and time again. He's a Gravel horse. He grows an extra leg in Durban during the winter, and he's the right horse. So if I was going to use my brain, I would say Safe Passage from Do It Again. If my bank manager's just come through, he's just actually telling me, no, that won't do. So we're going to hopefully get a Pomp and Power result. But I've got to get a bit of luck, I think.
Okay, let's go to Mike Wanklin. Mike, now it certainly has been murkier for you than when we spoke to you a couple of weeks ago. You've widened your assessment in terms of the shortlist. It's gone quite a bit wider for you. I can see you're in two minds, yeah. But I mean, if you had to nail it down to three horses that you'd expect to see right there in the finish, who would they be?
I tell you, a horse like Linebacker reminds me a lot of Spanish Galliard. So I'm going to go Linebacker from Do It Again and Comedy Ding.
Okay, no 3-year-olds there. Graham Hawkins, you're sticking with Do It Again. You've said that from word go. Second, third, and possibly fourth for you?
Yeah, I mean, I respect Linebacker enormously. I was looking for him to run a big race in the Hollywoodbets Gold Challenge, and that he did.
He did.
Because we needed to see something on Saturday which suggested that he's now peaking at the right time. He also loves Hollywoodbets Gravel. He won the Guineas. He won the Daily News 2000. He all but won last year's running of the July. His arch rival is obviously Comedy Ding. I just think that Linebacker is certainly peaking, and we're not quite sure where Comedy Ding is, having raided the Highveld. I'm not saying he's not in a place to win it, but we're not quite sure. What we are sure is that Linebacker, based on his run in the Hollywoodbets Gold Challenge on Saturday, was a clear indication that Vaughan's got him on the right track, back on the right track. But Do It Again was a little unlucky not to be closer to them last year. He's come down in the ratings. Jay made mention he's well handicapped. And so I'm sticking with Do It Again. Linebacker is my second choice. Sparkling Water is my third choice. And I'd have to make Safe Passage my fourth choice. I think he will be possibly the leading 3-year-old. I haven't written off Pump and Power. He's got to learn to race. He's got to settle. If he runs with his head in the sky as he did in the Daily News 2000, he's not going to get home, in my opinion. He can't afford to race like that again. And the fact that he stayed on for second in the Daily News 2000 was a credit to Pump and Power. But it also raised a question mark in my mind. You know, Waterbury Lane, 2 lengths behind Safe Passage. Yes, we know that Mike de Kock said Safe Passage was only 80% right. Plenty of more improvement to come. Aragosta, that's why I'm a little unsure. You know, the Daily News last year with Comedy Ding and Linebacker coming through to frank that form in the July. I'm not sure this Daily News 2000 is going to stand that test, but I'm happy to be proven wrong. It all depends where the 3-year-olds match up, but I'm sticking with Do It Again.
Okay, Jay August does a lot of number crunching, and when you do that analysis, who are the 3 or 4 that you would expect to see fighting out the finish and troubling the judges?
So, 2 best handicapped horses for me are Pump and Power and Do It Again. If Pump and Power finds the form and he gets the same run that he had, or he runs the same race he had in the Cape Derby, I think he'll win. But that's a big if, and the likelihood that's probably 40%. If he doesn't win, then it's Do It Again, and then I would take Safe Passage. But I must caution here: the KZN Guineas has the best record for producing July winners, just on a percentage basis over a long period of time. So don't write yours up, tell us.
Okay.
And then, frankly, it's any horse could win. It's a real handicap after that. So I wouldn't even mention it.
Right. So that is it from everyone else. I'm going to throw a cat amongst the pigeons and give you my horse, which no one has talked about, as my winner of the Hollywoodbets Durban July. Who would that be, Neil?
Dead Dog.
Well, hopefully Hoodspray.
No, you've mentioned Hoodspray.
Oh, you haven't mentioned anything? Geez, I don't know. What?
He's going Red Saxon, I'm sure.
No, you're close. You're in the right age group. Aragosta is my horse to win the Hollywoodbets Durban July. I'm going for Aragosta.
Why does it have a Greek sound to it?
Ahead of Sparkling Water, ahead of Safe Passage and Linebacker. And that's my take on it. And Do It Again. Obviously, if it won, there wouldn't be a dry eye in the house, and I certainly wouldn't be one.
Mike de Kock, 1, 2, 3.
I'm thinking of Aragosta. Do you remember a horse called Tropicante flying up but not getting there?
That wasn't Mike.
No, I'm not saying it was Mike, but do you remember that?
Yeah,
I do.
That's what I think is going to happen with Aragosta, but it's going to get up. Anyway, thanks, guys. That's my take on it, but it's been a pleasure actually being with all of you. We'll watch and see what happens next week. We've got Tuesday. We've got the Gallops on Thursday. We're looking forward to it all. And most importantly, for the new sponsor, as I said at the top of the show, a very appropriate sponsor. And Neil, just if you can close off here in the last couple of minutes. It's wonderful to have a race at 5 million Rand. It's re-energized the race. I know we've come out of lockdown. We haven't got full crowds going as yet anyway. But I mean, just a quick word on the sponsor. It's been fantastic to be part of it from the moment they announced it at that big function which we went to in Durban. It's great to have a big name like that associated with our premier race in South Africa.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's a perfect fit for them because it's a wide open race. That's the business they're in. And, they'll be laying lots of different horses. I mean, now they're even laying Aragosta because your fans are going to be back carrying Aragosta. So, none of us have got the same horses. And so it's a perfect fit for them. And they know they're racing. They love their racing. So very excited to have Hollywoodbets as the sponsor. And, if you can catch the quartet on the day, you can retire.
Yeah, absolutely, which you'll no doubt want to do with the number of bets you've got riding on it. Thanks very much to Mike Wanklin in Dubai. Thanks to Graham Hawkins in Durban. Thanks to Jay August. With all those books behind you, you'll keep yourself busy. I expect that on email shortly about those draws, Jay, which we can release out to the public. They'll be looking for it. And thanks very much, Neil. Hope you get to your destination in one piece.
Thank you.